Welcome to our very first episode with our new name, Proudly on Record. Today we have with us Joy, who is a former Jehovah's Witness. I'm very excited. I know nothing about Jehovah Witness things, and yes, from southeastern Kentucky, who now lives and works in Morgantown, West Virginia. She became a mother at 19 years old to her son Dante, who is now 28 years old. Joy has navigated disfellowshipping, being bisexual, and being a teen mother in an ultra red political part of Appalachia while also deconstructing her religious experiences. Appalachia is an easy place to radicalize, and Joy finds her politics are better suited on the far left. Her activism centers around food security, abortion access, and combating white supremacy and Christian nationalism. We love a comrade. She loves to garden and be in the woods and lift heavy weights and put them back down. Can't relate there, but I love that for you. She is partnered with her girlfriend Angie and has a stepdaughter, Kaylee.
Welcome.
Welcome, Joy.
This is family.
Joy is Carrie's fam.
And fun fact, Carrie and I are actually born on the same day, so we share a birthday. Is a heated debate over my astrological sign, though.
Do you identify as a Leo?
Oh,
Then?
1,000%. Yeah. Yep. I will never let go of my Leo tendencies. I'm just born early. I'm just a little smidge
I don't
early.
know, man. Knowing Carrie as well as I know her, she is a Cancer, man. But she definitely has Leo tendencies for sure. There's Leo sprinkled in.
But yes, definitely the shared birthday.
That's so cool.
Yeah, okay. Let's start
You
a
do it.
little bit with, I guess, just start with your background. Tell us a little bit about where and how you grew up. What was the religious atmosphere? So I grew up in southeastern Kentucky, and it's the kind of place where you could name the town, but no one would know where that was. You would just have to say, "Go south from Lexington about an hour and a half, and you'll get there." Yes.
And
It was, very conservative. It was ground zero for a lot of things, actually. I believe the high school was the first one that ever had a daycare on site because we had so much of an issue with teenage pregnancy. It's very impoverished. It was ground zero for the opioid crisis, for the Tylenol 3 crisis that came before that. I used to drive a county away just to go work in a restaurant, and I didn't think that was abnormal until I went to college and realized other people just went a few blocks away to go to work. So it's really poor. Education is hard to come by. A lot of people leave and they don't come back because there's not a lot to sustain you there, even if you want to try to stay. And it is extremely religious. And there are a lot of charismatic religions there. So evangelical, things like that, snake handling churches, a lot of Baptist religions. And you know what? I don't think I met a Catholic until I went to college. It's just really, really full
I
of
don't think I did either. That's so funny to me because being from New England, it was the total opposite. There were a lot of Catholics and Methodists. I guess when I always thought about the South, I always just thought Southern Baptist. I thought that's where all the Baptists were. And I've been surprised to see how many charismatic churches are in
Mhm.
that belt as well.
Yeah, out in the hollers.
Out in the hollers, I guess.
But we've talked before about being in such a saturated Christian area that it doesn't matter if you go to Christian school or regular school, it's all the same. You're still getting all of that content even in schools. Was that different for you as a Jehovah's Witness? Were you othered within that? Yeah, so my parents actually converted. They were approached by missionaries, of all things, when they were in their mid to late 20s, and they converted into the Jehovah's Witness religion a couple of years or so before I was born. So my sister and I were both born into it, right? And one thing about them is that that religion is a very isolating religion. It very much controls what you have access to, and of course this was before the internet, but very controlling about your reading material, the music that you listen to. You really weren't supposed to have friends outside of the religion. You certainly were not supposed to date outside of the religion. My parents also wanted to isolate us because because they were afraid of the state of the world, and so all of those things just sort of blended in together for them, and we lived at the head of the holler. The next neighbor that I had was a mile down the road, and it was my grandmother, so we really were very isolated, and on top of that, my parents would go into school when we started school and talk with all of the teachers about what our beliefs were, and when there were parties, like a Valentine's Day party, the teachers would actually remove me from class and send me to the library or something like that and give me a book or something else to do. So I did not know a lot of common cultural associations with any kind of holidays. I didn't know any Christmas carols, and I didn't have any favorite Halloween costumes. I didn't participate literally in anything. If someone had a birthday, for instance, I had to leave the room. So now I'd not remind the teacher that she was supposed to do that. I just sort of sat quietly and hoped that the cupcake would come near me before I got pulled away. It was very isolating. And so, to answer your question, in some ways, I missed out on some of those things because I was removed from a lot of things that kids were doing when it came time to do those things.
At least was homeschooled. So, I was just thinking of the isolation aspect there and and
Yeah,
yeah,
I
the
definitely relate
othering.
to that. Not all of the holidays, but obviously we weren't allowed to do Halloween, so I can empathize on, like, missing out on a holiday situation. The only thing that I really know about Jehovah's Witness is that they don't celebrate holidays and birthdays. Can you talk a little bit about what Jehovah Witness is, what they believe?
They are actually an offshoot of Seventh-day Adventists, so you'll find a lot of very similar behaviors. I kind of feel like the founder just didn't wanna be a vegetarian anymore and was like, "I like all these things, but not that, so I'm gonna start my own." Essentially, there are some beliefs they have that are very different from other Christian sects, and one of those things is they don't believe in hell. They also don't believe everybody's gonna go to heaven. They believe literally 144,000 people are going to go to heaven, and everybody else is going to stay on earth, and the earth is going to be reclaimed as a paradise, and you'll get to live in paradise forever. And I think that was very attractive to my parents because they loved nature and the earth, and they didn't actually have strong feelings about heaven. They really liked the idea of an afterlife where you could stay on earth forever. They also don't accept any blood transfusions, and this was probably one of the biggest points of contention growing up, and still is for my mother because she's still in the church. And having a blood transfusion was essentially signing away your little soul from the paradise. Because of their advocacy in hospitals, there actually were other treatments sort of developed to, like, blood expanders and saline treatments and things like that, which are actually pretty decent for some people, so, like, that's a small plus. But growing up, everybody knew someone who died for refusing a blood transfusion. My mother lost a really close friend after childbirth because she bled to death, and the alternatives
Wow.
were not working. And this woman was treated as a martyr, right?
Yeah.
Because she, all the way to death, held firm on that. And our literature was full of stories like that about people who'd been in accidents or whatever and being set up as a martyr. So they don't take blood transfusions. They don't celebrate any holidays at all except for their version of Passover. There are all kinds of wackadoo beliefs. Like, at one point, they believed that chess came from Satan and you shouldn't play chess because,
Huh,
Satan.
okay.
So, there's all kinds of fun stuff, but I really feel like those are probably the big ones that set them apart.
It's interesting that Jehovah's Witness isn't based on a fear system. It sounds like if everybody kinda goes to heaven and earth turns into, like, a paradise, I feel like so many evangelical religions are based on that fear system and that punishment system, and Jehovah's Witness doesn't really have that. What do they think happened to bad people? Anything?
They just don't come
They
back.
just
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So their belief
Okay.
system is that everyone except for ultra bad people will get a chance after Armageddon. They're very Armageddon focused. That's probably another
Okay.
important part, right? They believe that the world is going to come to an end and it is right around the corner, and they have all these embarrassing predictions about when that was going to be. Like, for my parents, it was 1975 and that came and went, and then it was in the 90s, and then it was the turn of the century, and then they kind of just stopped making specific predictions like
Yeah.
that. But basically, they believe that when Armageddon happens, that really evil people will be killed by God and the angels. And then as the earth is coming back into paradise state, this period of time will last for about 1,000 years. During that time, people get a chance to unlearn and relearn the things they need to. And then there will be a final test, which sounds wild to me, and there's not a whole lot said about that. And then after that, people get to make their choice and then they're done, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it is not a fear-based religion in terms of its doctrine, except Armageddon is
Yeah.
they talk about that a lot. Like, I remember my little sister had nightmares from the time she was very little, and it was all based on these ideas about demons and what the demons could
Mm.
do, what Satan might be doing, and what Armageddon would be like. And I remember being 12 years old and my mother sending me to my father because I was in tears worrying about what Armageddon would be like.
Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
you're so right that it's not a, "If you don't do this, then you'll go to hell," kind of thing, but it's a different kind of fear-based religion in that way.
So, being born into the religion, was there a point where you were like all in? Take us through your shift there to where you are now. I know that's a long process, but
Yeah, I'm closing in on 50 years old, this might take a while, right? Yeah, I was born into it, and I remember even from a very young age, not thinking that it was wrong, but thinking I was wrong. I firmly believed that eventually I was just not going to cut it. It's like original imposter syndrome, right? One day they're all gonna know that I don't really have a pure heart, that I'm, this or that. So I was bought in, and there were periods of time where I tried so hard. I just knew that one day it wasn't gonna work for me anymore. I remember having a sleepover with my then best friend, who was also a member of the church, and we were kind of co-conspirators in a way, I guess you could say. We kept each other's secrets. And I remember we were having all these long conversations, and then tears started running down her face, and we were only about 15, and I said, "Renee, what's wrong?" And she said, "I just think you're gonna get kicked out one day, and I don't think there's anything we can do about it." We weren't really talking about radical things, it was just a thing I knew was probably gonna happen to me someday, right? I went through a period of time in my mid to late teens. Well, my father, for one thing, my father died when I was 17 years old. He killed himself. And that really
Oh,
threw our family into some turmoil. Of course, the Jehovah's Witnesses do not believe in therapy. They might say they do, but it's strongly discouraged. And so we weren't getting any of that, especially in the mid 90s. And I just sort of drifted for a little bit and then I got kicked out. And that was a very swift acceleration.
I forgot Jehovah's Witness, if you get kicked out of the church, it's very excommunicated, right? Like, everybody just cuts you off. So, yeah.
They actually have 2 layers of getting kicked.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Did not know that.
Right, they like it so much, they have tiered system, right? So, the first one is the most common one, and it's disfellowshipping, and that's what
Okay.
happened to me, and you're right, once you're removed, they finally in the '80s, they kind of relented and let your family talk to you, but they
Mm,
pretend like you do not exist. I would be in the grocery store, I'm 18 years old, and
Mhm.
people who have known me since childhood pretend I literally don't exist. They're looking right through me. I could say hi, and they just pretend that I'm not there. It's very psychologically painful. And the goal, of course, is to put so much psychological pressure on someone that they'll do anything to make it stop. So that's basic disfellowshipping. The second level is called apostasy. If you are apostatized, which is a literal verb that they use, if you are apostatized, that is essentially just saying, look, you are now Satan's toenail, I guess, right? It's not just you messed up and you need to be taught a lesson. Now you're working against us. And
You're an enemy.
yeah.
and, like, literally, this podcast is grounds for apostasy. So,
Yes.
Satan's spending a little time for me, I guess, but, I
Oh,
mean,
no.
it's designed to terrify you,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
to keep you from speaking out, to keep you from talking about what you saw go on there. Like, any of
Mhm.
that kind of activism is grounds for apostasy, and there aren't many apostates. Actually, they have a convention every year, it's called Apostafest, and I've not been to
What?
one because I'm not technically apostasized. So,
Yet.
Yet. The rebel in me is like, "Go big or go home. Go for apostasy, man. If you're gonna be disfellowshipped, just go all the way." Sounds
Oh
like a
my
cool
god.
club.
Get a T-shirt.
I'm honestly kind of surprised that I haven't been. Um,
Yeah. Will
yeah.
they do that after your disfellowship? If you're that much of a quote unquote trouble person, they'll just be like, "You're an apostate now." Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, so who needs fear-based
Yeah.
religion when you have fear from being totally
Cut off from your
cut off from your community?
community.
Yeah,
Yeah. I
no.
was thinking the same thing. They just have fear in a different way.
Yeah, so it all comes back to fear.
Yeah.
Oh,
Crazy.
man. Okay, so many directions to go.
Do you mind if I asked why you got disfellowshipped?
You sure can. So so I had 2 official charges, and at the time, I was like, "This is bull crap," and now I realize they were 1,000% right. Um, the first charge was not being repentant enough, and which was fair, that was true. And the second one was being too much of an influence, and at
Mhm.
18 years old, I thought that was crazy. So basically so what had happened was, right, I had a relationship with a boy who was not in the church, but was studying with someone to become a member of the church. We broke up before I started college, and he did not take that well at all. And he asked me out again, like on a Saturday. I said, "I don't think this is a great idea." And by Tuesday, I was sitting in with a group of elders who wanted to talk to me about this relationship that I had with him. He gave them every note we'd ever written to each other. Everything we had, every picture, not that we really had, like, racy pictures or anything like that. If social media had existed back then, I would have really been screwed, right? But, like, he turned over everything. It was such a betrayal to have 3 old men read every heartfelt note I ever wrote to this boy. And essentially, they were mad. It was already over, but they were mad that I hadn't told them about it. I did not really understand what was happening. My father had been dead for 3 months. It was a nasty time for our family. And essentially, he got in there first and made a big performative show of everything. And then they brought me in, and I did not do that. And I told them when they were asking me questions about stuff, I said, "I know that you want to see me cry. I know that you want to see me kind of thrash around on the floor and worry about my future." And I said, "I am all cried out. My dad died 3 months ago. You're going to do what you're going to do, and you just want to see me suffer. And I'm not doing that." There were doctrinal things they brought up that were actually inaccurate, and I knew they were inaccurate. It was a whole mess. It was so bad that, well, and here's, the influential part. So they told me that they were disfellowshipping me, and they told me why. And when they said too influential, I said, "The average age of this congregation is 56. I am 18 years old. I don't understand. That's probably why I got disfellowshipped." Like, data, statistics. I was not stupid, you know?
Yeah.
And so they got rid of me, but it caused a crack in my congregation. So, someone actually stepped down from his position over it,
Wow.
contacted the headquarters of the Jehovah's Witnesses place. I saw a district overseer, 3 months later, who was trying to get me to appeal the decision. And again, I
Huh.
was 18 years old. Actually, I was 19. I was very young, 19 then. Patting my young teenage self on the back, right? This was after a church meeting. I was still disfellowshipped, and I was sitting in that room with the district overseer and one of the people who had disfellowshipped me the first time around. And in my mind, I'm thinking, "You're not going to apostatize me and crack whatever I have left." Right? The district overseer asked me, he said, "Do you think that a mistake has been made here?" And I learned later that all he needed me to say was yes in order for him to go in and try to redo something. But I'm thinking, "Nope, you're not getting me."
Mhm.
I told him, "Isn't it the case that this is a decision made directly by God, that the elders pray and God gives them that decision?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Then why in the world would I say it's a mistake when the answer has come directly from God?" And I watched him exchange looks with the other man, and he said, "Do you have any other questions?" And I said, "Can I go now?" And I
Mhm.
walked out of that room.
Yeah.
I feel honestly, I feel like that was such a good answer on so many
Man.
levels.
And it was also theologically correct. It
Yeah.
was
Yeah,
doctrinally correct, like,
yeah.
that's what they believe, and I thought to myself that I was getting trapped so that they could do more to me, it
Mm.
never occurred to me that they wanted to help.
Yeah, man. I knew you were a badass, but I did not know the levels, so I'm here for all of it. They disfellowshipped you, like, 3 months after your dad? That is insane. That is insane.
And not only that, but for what?
Yeah, like
Like,
wild,
So, I'm
wild.
sorry, it's
s
about a year after my dad died, not that that
Yeah.
matters very
still.
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, still.
yeah,
But
Oh, the initially the 3 months after your dad died, that was with the boy thing,
yeah,
right?
yes.
and
Screw that
then
guy, by the way.
yeah.
And then when you finally got disfellowship, that was, like, a year after.
Yeah.
Was that an expectation that if you're in a relationship, you go to your elders, or why would that have even been a yeah.
That's what I was like, that's so
Well,
crazy.
so they don't encourage outside relationships at all,
Yeah.
and it
Whoa,
just
hold up. Was this guy not even Jehovah's Witness? He literally went to your church just
Yeah.
to mess with you.
yeah,
Men.
Wow.
and
Oh my gosh.
yeah, it
What's
makes
his
me
name? I just wanna talk.
Wild.
That's
Oh my gosh.
insane.
yeah,
Okay. That's a lot.
Wow.
I'm wrapping my head around all of the things. So you were already disfellowshipped when Dante came along? You were
yep,
already disfellowshipped then?
yep,
Okay.
yep,
And you had already graduated at that point, or are you still in high school?
yep.
Yeah.
He's already graduated from high school. Yes, at that time in my life, it was a very existentially dark time. Nothing
Mhm.
mattered. And then on top of that, just thinking about purity culture, because I know that that's something that all conservative religions have in common,
Yeah.
for sure. But the thing with purity culture, at least the way that I grew up in it, is that everything was wrong.
Mhm.
Um, and everything carried the same moral weight. I could have this outside relationship, or I could star in my own porno, and the
Yeah.
result would be the
It would
same.
be the same, yeah. Yeah.
Like, it's everything is bad, and it's really, really bad. What you don't learn are natural, healthy boundaries. What happens is everything inside your body, everything related to natural feelings, sex, attraction, flirting, whatever, everything in your body feels icky because you
Mhm.
feel like you're doing something wrong. So your nervous system is just bombarded with this constant feeling of, I'm doing something wrong.
Mhm.
And what that does is it keeps you from being able to know when something actually is dangerous for you. It sets you up to
Yeah.
get hurt. It sets you up not to be able to see coercion, manipulation. And so that was a time in my life where I got really hurt. I had no community. My community was
Mhm.
all gone. My family relationships were strained, and you're looking for what you can get, but you don't know how to build healthy relationships. You've never been taught how. You can't tell the difference between someone's bad intention for you and human connection. It all feels
Mhm.
bad anyway. You don't have a spiritual future anymore, so what difference does it make? Those were some really difficult times. I got pregnant with Dante that year and had him. I was sexually assaulted. There were multiple things, and to say nothing of the emotional destruction that all of that caused. It took a lot of unlearning and relearning, which I am frankly still doing, right? Like I have friends who I trust dearly who I can say, "My nervous system has no idea what this is. Tell me
Mhm.
what you think this is. Am I overreacting or am I underreacting?" And honestly, underreacting is a bigger problem for me than an overreaction is. because I have so many dead nerves, if you will, and I don't know that the stove is truly hot until I'm really getting burned. All of that was tied back to purity culture and not having accurate information about your body and your feelings and the ability to just develop normal, healthy boundaries.
We talk about that a lot too, about how there's so much within almost any church system that does rewire your brain. One for fear-based things, also for not trusting yourself, not trusting your intuition, not trusting your gut, and like rewiring all of your ability to know like what's good for you and what's not when you are so used to being told this is black and white and this is what's good, this is what's not, and you shouldn't be deciding because you don't know what's good for you. Yeah.
And how it just sets you up to get into those toxic relationships
Yeah.
because like you said, you're used to the abuse patterns in the
Yeah.
church, like, and like you said, I didn't even think about the extreme of everything's bad, and the worst possible consequence for the smallest thing, it's all the same. You're going to hell whether you say a little white lie or you go out and murder somebody. That's
And
yeah,
even the underreaction being
yeah,
an issue too.
yeah.
That is all so connected.
Okay, real talk. If you're still here, you clearly love us. So go ahead and make it official. Hit that subscribe button and give us those coveted 5 stars. It's free, it's easy, and honestly, it feeds our validation issues. Now, let's get back to the good stuff.
Looking back on my young teen and early 20s years too, I knew the way I grew up relating to purity culture and ideas about sex, I knew that was wrong. It took me a long time to figure out what was right for me because I
Mm.
just assumed that everything I had come out of must be wrong and everyone else must have it figured out. It was easy for me to fall into some dangerous situations because
Mhm.
I assumed other people knew so much more than I did, and it never
Yeah.
occurred to me that they just had a totally different, messed up way of doing things too.
And especially as you said before, that early knowing and feeling like you didn't belong within the religion, that early feeling of, well, I am wrong, and how that would translate into every context later in life and having to overcome that mindset is a lot too.
When you're constantly told that other people know more than you and you have to listen to the deacons and the church and your elders, and then you get out of that environment, it is so easy to just assume that everybody else around you knows what's going on.
How did you start figuring out who you actually were and like rewiring those brain pathways as you got away from the church?
Lots of therapy. Lots and lots of therapy. I will also say Dante saved my life. He saved my life because I did not know what unconditional love was until I had him, and I wanted to be the best parent I could possibly be. And eventually, I moved from wanting a better world and life for him to wanting one for myself. And when you want better for yourself, it's easier to accept things like therapy or what have you. I remember in my very early 30s, late 20s, early 30s, I went to therapy specifically to be a better friend because I had some insights about the fact that I was never taught how to have real relationships. So Jehovah's Witnesses knock on doors. That's another big character. Well, they used to. They don't
Mhm.
now.
Have they completely stopped that?
For the most
Mhm.
part, yeah, they have
Huh.
magazine stands, and they'll set up outside of farmers markets and wait for people
Yeah.
to approach them, and every time I walk by, I'm like, "You wimps." But basically, we had so many meetings during a week, and one of those meetings was specifically to train you how to talk to people at their houses or in your school or what have you. We were taught how to scan people's yards, homes, read their, personality to see what might appeal to them and how to combat or overcome any friction that might be in between this person talking to you. It's like it's salesmanship, right? And I was really good at it. And I liked people anyway. I liked knowing what made people tick. But the twin piece of that, evil twin, I guess, is that you become discouraged from telling people actual vulnerable things about yourself because they believed in a concept called blood guilt. And I don't think they're the only conservative church to do so. And the concept there is if your friend is committing a sin, and you know about it and you don't say something about it, in God's eyes, you are just as guilty as that person.
Wow.
Oh,
I
that is
take
some
back
top
everything
level manipulation.
yeah, I take
Holy
back
cow.
everything I said about no fear.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Take it
so
all back.
It's just sneaky fear.
Sneaky
yeah.
fear. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
all in here, right? And
Yeah.
and nobody ever told you not to tell your friends your secrets, but any thinking, reasonable person would say, "If I tell my best friend that I'm seeing this boy at school, now I have put her in a situation where she will get in trouble if she doesn't tell on me." So the loving thing to do, if you really love people, is not to tell them important details about yourself. It's very
Wild.
backwards. So you've got this what my sister Jenny and I refer to as householder syndrome, where you're really good at these surface level interactions with people and
Hmm.
people just really feel like you get them and you know them and that sort of thing, but you are never sharing anything vulnerable about yourself. So of
Mm.
course you're going to have terrible relationships.
Well, and the fear of other people, even once you're out of the church, that constant fear of, oh, if I tell someone something, they're gonna use that and go tell someone else and like use it against me. And
Well,
oh
and that
wow.
literally happened to me.
Yeah.
And more than once that happened to me because there were some very faithful Jehovah's Witness kids who would absolutely rat you out if they just even caught a
Wild.
whiff of you doing something bad. So it doesn't lead to a lot of trust, and and then if you are vulnerable, then you've got the added problem of being like, "Well, let me tell you how I grew up. Please stick around and don't run away
Yeah.
screaming," you know? So
Yeah. Oh my
it's like
gosh.
you're damned if you do and damned if you don't, but that was really, really important to me to figure out how to be a good friend because I do really
Yeah.
love people. I probably worked on that for a solid 1 to 2 years in therapy, and it was life-changing. I'm an
Mm,
excellent friend now, and that's not just
mm.
me being a Leo talking about it, right? Like, I'm a really good friend because I
Yeah.
worked really hard on it. And then when you're in therapy, as I'm sure you know, you crack open one thing and you learn so much and then you just keep circling back around to some of your experiences and getting new insights and things like that. So therapy has been the key. And I will also say that within the past 5 years, I have more friends who are actively in the church, and we've been having some really amazing conversations, and that's been really helpful as well.
In Jehovah's Witness church or just in church in general?
I stay far away
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
they're not allowed to talk to me, so
Yeah.
they have territory cards, which is like a let's just say a map of Elisa's
I'm
face.
sorry, this is insane. I'm just like, what?
So imagine that the county is like a big map of the county and you've laminated it and then you've cut it up into index card size things or maybe bigger. That's a territory card. And the goal is to work the territory within a year's time. And if you can't cover all your territory because like my county was big and there were only about 50 or 60 of us, um, then they send missionaries in to help you. But on the territory card, if there is an address or a place that you are not supposed to go, maybe because someone's threatened your life or they were kicked out, they put a little black X where you're not supposed to be. They're not going to ever come talking to me because I'm a black X on the territory card in Morgantown right now.
Huh.
So there's that. Yeah.
There's so much there of like, okay, so if you moved, would they find you?
Every time I have moved, the Jehovah's Witnesses have known where I was before I got all my boxes unpacked. Do you know who told
That's
them?
insane.
My mother told them where I was.
Wow. Okay.
Is that
Yeah.
another like yeah, I started to say, is that another like you have to say so that you protect your own self kind of thing? The levels of psychological manipulation is wild.
When you get disfellowshipped, is there any way to get undisfellowshipped? Or is it like, no, you don't have a chance? Okay,
Yep.
there is.
You
What do
keep
you
coming
do?
back to meetings,
Okay.
you go through a series of, like, studying things with a particular elder, and eventually they just decide you're good. Like, they're like, "Yep, she's been contrite enough, she's worked really hard and just sit
Wild.
there quietly," and there was one woman in our congregation who got disfellowshipped, like, 3 times while I was there, and it was always for, like, I think gossip. Like, she just really loved the tea on people, and she
Yeah.
couldn't help it, And the announcement would come that she's been kicked out again, and then she would be there, and she would be very sorrowful, and then 6 months later, she's back, and
That's
it's all
so
good for a
funny.
while.
The announcement, like, in the, like, hall meetings, or is that like a flyer? How are people getting announced?
It's a public announcement. Yeah,
Yeah.
from the microphone.
Wow.
You
What?
know what's wild about that woman who was kicked out 3 times? Her husband is a pedophile. They knew
What?
about that. Nothing ever happened to him except they don't allow him to do some of the mundane activities that men can do within a congregation.
Yeah. I wish I was a little surprised.
Not even disfellowshipped, nothing? Not
No,
even
not
wow.
even there's a level below disfellowshipping, which is called public reproval. And that's more like a public service announcement to the families to be like, "Well, that teenager is publicly reproved. Maybe you don't wanna let your kids hang out with them." Nobody ever says they're not reproved anymore, you just sort of assume it's over after a while. So, like, he got publicly reproved and had some of his, like he couldn't carry the microphone down the aisle so that people could be heard, you
Oh. Oh, man. What are gender roles like within a Jehovah's Witness? I'm assuming like almost every other church, but are there differences there?
Yeah, so they wore pants and they didn't have restrictions on what you could do with your hair and things like that. From a leadership perspective, it was very much the men are in charge and the women are supposed to listen. There were some rules, funny little side policies about what happens if you're all trying to go out door knocking together, but there aren't actually any men there to like lead the prayer and what the woman who would have to be dealing with that duty, what she would need to do in order to make sure that
Hmm.
she was not, I don't know, unsightly before God or something. So, generally speaking, the men controlled most of the sermons. Some progressive churches will let anyone read scriptures. Women couldn't do that, only men could do that. Women could not do things like work the tech for the songs and things like that, or run the microphones up and down the aisles, stuff that you could easily have done. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know what a penis would bring to that, particular
Clearly,
task.
it's necessary.
Ob
We don't understand because we're women, but it has to
Right.
be.
And I mean, they frowned on higher education for obvious reasons, but they didn't frown on people working outside the home or stuff like that. Their gender roles were very much, leadership focused, and
Mm.
they very heavily policed your sexuality, of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
We still haven't talked about the gay
Right?
stuff.
I know.
I
We
know.
will.
Within the purity culture, is that the same for men and women within the church, or is that, more on women?
More on women, but the men weren't really supposed to have facial hair, which I never understood that one because some of the drawings that they had in our literature, the angels definitely had facial hair. They had rules about your clothing and things like that, but for the women, there was just so much more, like your makeup, your hair, how short your skirt was, how high your heels were you being modest? And it's so much easier to find things to pick at a woman with modesty than it is with men.
It's so culty, and you said that dating outside of Jehovah's Witness was frowned upon. Was having friendships outside of the church frowned upon? Like, anything outside of the church relationship-wise was frowned upon?
Yeah, I mean, they wanted you to be polite because you could always what is that movie about real estate where it's, like, always be closing? So, they
Yeah.
wanted you to be nice to your coworkers and nice to the people at school because it would provide an opportunity for you to talk to them about being a Jehovah's Witness, but they did not want you to form close bonds with people like that because they considered that bad association.
Mm.
Gosh, not to mention that that just puts every relationship that you have outside of the church as a transaction.
That was something when I finally left the church, I felt so relieved. Not that I was seeing people as projects intentionally, but in the back of my mind, like, if that is what I believe, I am hoping that you too will eventually believe this. And so once I was finally out of the church, just having that relief from having to worry about the state of someone's soul was so nice.
Little sister, she had multiple times where she would come to my parents kind of crying about Armageddon because she liked her teachers and she liked her
Mhm,
kids at
mhm.
school, and she didn't
Yeah.
like thinking about them being destroyed
Yeah.
eventually. And that was
Yeah,
she didn't think that was fair, and it's not fair.
Yeah.
It's a huge burden when you look around and you think all of these people are in trouble.
Mhm.
yeah,
They're in trouble, and it's your job to help them get saved.
Yeah.
yeah.
Was there that same expectation for children and parents? Are you supposed to go and, like, tell your parents that you have done something wrong? I'm sure that has a lot of fun
Yeah.
things that go along with that too. Yeah, wow.
I never did that, but my sister
Yeah,
did that all the time. It was
yeah.
so ingrained in my little sister that I remember her getting off of the bus in kindergarten, and mom was there to pick us up, and Jenny would immediately turn to mom and say, "I did something bad today, but I forgot what it was."
Oh, no.
And mom would be like,
Oh.
"It's alright, honey. Yeah, I'm sure it was fine." But Jenny really remembers this very
Oh,
vivid,
I'm sure.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. I'm assuming Jenny has been to lots of therapy.
Has. Jenny was disfellowshipped a few years after I was, and her
Um,
disfellowship experience was different and better because older
Okay.
sister had been through it first. But Jenny's disfellowshipping story is no less wild because they stalked her, trying to get her to come into a disfellowshipping hearing, basically. And a man sat outside of her apartment in a van for hours, hoping to catch her doing something, and I got that put a stop to. Um,
yeah.
you
Wow.
know, knew where her apartment was because of mom too.
Oh.
It was craziness, yeah.
How is your relationship with your mom? She is still in the church, correct?
Yeah, so mom stayed in the church the whole time, and it's not great. My sister and I don't speak very much to my mother at all. Eventually, we just decided we had to do that because it was too painful otherwise. I think what's always been difficult about my relationship with my mom is that my mom is very active in the community as well, and she is seen as a very good person. And when a very good person says really cruel things behind closed doors, it's hard for other people to believe you. I remember actually telling a teacher that I really trusted, trying to tell her what my mom was saying to me. And this teacher said, "Oh, honey, I'm sure you've just misunderstood." And just that deflated feeling of, I really don't have anybody to tell this to. On top of that, there was so much manipulation. I remember, and Carrie, you will find this hilarious, because we have this festival back home. It's called the Daniel Boone Festival. That's everyone loses their mind over the Daniel Boone Festival, okay? And so we lost our mind too about it when we were kids, and we wanted to be there, and we wanted to ride the rides and get slung around and have fun and eat cotton candy and all that stuff. And we really wanted to go at night because the lights are beautiful and
Mm.
it's just an exciting fair experience. And my mother looked me and my sister dead in the eyes. I was probably, I don't know, 13 and Jenny might have been 11. And she said, "No one goes to the Daniel Boone Festival at night except to meet boys." And I'm like, "What? What? Okay."
Sure,
It's
mom.
when the evil deeds are done, once
And
the
it's
sun goes down.
She was always stealing my diary, she was always going through my stuff, and she has an image of me as a sneaky person, and that used to really bother me, but I was sneaking, right? I was just trying to have a little damn
Mm.
normalcy.
And a little privacy. I mean,
Yeah.
if everything is so surveillance
Yeah,
Yeah.
it like
yes.
yeah.
It goes back to that thing of everything is wrong and
Mhm.
everything's punishable. She doesn't even know why I was disfellowshipped.
Huh.
Huh.
And she told me several years ago, she said, "It must have been," how did she put it? "Whatever it was, it must have been bad or they wouldn't have done it, and it must have been true." And I'm like, "That's weird. That's a wild take." 2 or 3 years ago, she set off kind of a storm by threatening to send elders to my house, and it's always that one last try. I came in for a funeral, and she had not seen me in years, and her parting comments to me were to basically chase me out the building to tell me that the Jehovah's Witnesses had a website now, and I could go on this website at any time, and I'm like, "I know how the internet works." You know, but
Yeah.
that was her way of basically being like, "One last shot to save you." What really did it for me, though, was when Angie and I were together, and I knew we were gonna stay together, and this was probably
Mhm.
2 years into our relationship. She started talking about something, and I told her, "If I come in, I'm bringing Angie with me. I'm not going to pretend like Angie doesn't exist."
Yeah.
And mom literally pretended like I had said something totally different. She wouldn't even say Angie's name, and it just infuriated me. It's one thing to treat me that way, but you know what? It's when it's your loved one, that they're
Yep.
behaving poorly toward, that unlocked a whole other set of skills that I did not know that I had, and I just told her outright, "I'm not going to tolerate you
Mhm.
pretending like Ange doesn't exist and that we are
Yeah.
together. I'm not saying you have to like it, but you will
Mhm.
not pretend it's not happening."
Yeah.
And I just didn't talk to her much after that.
Yeah.
It's not worth it. It's just,
Yeah.
what am I getting out of it? She wants the benefits of relationship without any of the actual work that it takes.
This keeps coming up, and we continually find that most queer people, when there is some sort of division with the parent or someone who is, again, not accepting or not whatever, the queer person is generally the one who is putting out all the effort to try to maintain this relationship because of guilt, because of trying to be the better person. And we talk a lot about how there is just extreme societal pressure for the person who is being marginalized to maintain that connection and to usually push part of yourself down to keep that connection. Please speak more about how you got to where you are and like, what that looked like for you.
Yeah. Loads of therapy. So there's the therapy thing again, but having a therapist who is able to help describe what's actually happening.
Mm.
For example, worrying that she's sitting there alone waiting on us to call and we're not calling and imagining that she's feeling bad. Having a therapist look at you and say, "Is she? No, honey, that's what you would be doing.
Yeah.
That's
Oh.
your good
Oh,
heart,
no.
right?" That
Yeah.
doesn't mean that's what, like, behavior is a language too. Learning that people also speak through their behavior has taught me to really be able to better read what's happening. I think that there is a level between complete no contact and throwing yourself into the machine over and over again.
Mhm.
Sister and I will never let mom be homeless or hungry or not get the medical care she needs, etc. But we have stopped putting out bids for connection because she doesn't want them. I just reminding myself of how I feel after the phone call for days. Just reminding myself of the facts at hand. Also, I will say, my decision about that relationship with my mother is not up for negotiation with anybody else.
Mhm.
I know that people are gonna be like, "Oh, you're gonna regret that." Am I?
Yeah. That's that societal pressure. Everyone's like, "But why? Like, why do you think I'm gonna regret this? Why do you think this is such a terrible decision? And where are you basing that?" When you first of all, you have no idea what the relationship is. You're not in it. And where's that coming from? It's all guilt and manipulation. So if I don't
I
get it.
It's especially with it's your mother, right? So
Yeah.
that relationship, right from the beginning, is one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful, formative relationship that you could have. We're just not wired to be like, "Well, that's done." It feels wrong that that relationship cannot be maintained in some way, and it is wrong, but it's not wrong because I did anything wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, so I think some of those things have preserved my sanity. Like, my sister will, I think, probably be a little more freely talking about the problems that she has with mom and her decision not to talk with her, and therefore it sort of invites people to have an opinion about it, and I just don't invite people to have an opinion about it, and that helps me
Yeah.
because then I'm not reopening the case, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And frankly, we've laid things out very clearly and very carefully. There's a door open if she wants to walk through it. She's
Right.
choosing not to.
Yeah.
And I remind myself, I'm very good at communicating. In my job, I'm professionally very good at this. I know I'm
Yeah.
not suddenly a moron when I was communicating what my needs were about this situation. It makes you start to distrust yourself. Maybe I just didn't say
Mhm.
it right. Maybe she just needs more time for this or that. Mm-mm.
Yeah. Yeah.
No. So,
And if it was more time, that's still not something that you should have to keep working at to try to build.
I knew I was healed when this dust up a few years ago happened, and my sister and I just really laid everything out about the way we grew up in the church and how damaging it was, and it was almost laughable to see the excuses that she was making for the real abuse and damage that happened to both of us. And I knew I was healed because at some point when my disfellowshipping came up, I was able to say very clearly to my mother, "You know what? I didn't actually do anything wrong back then. I used to think I did. I
Yeah.
didn't.
Yeah.
And God loved me then. He loves me now, and He's going to love me going forward. So that's on y'all."
Yeah. I could sit and talk to you all night.
Wow.
Wanna talk about the gay stuff
Yeah,
now? We
let's
haven't
get
gotten
into
to
the
the
gay
gay.
stuff. We gotta get to the gay.
'Cause you were already disfellowshipped when you were 18, or did you know before you were disfellowshipped?
So, because of purity culture, right? This is also, I feel embarrassed to even be telling these stories, but I was drawing naked women when I was 12 years old and definitely throwing them away and hiding so
Mhm.
that I wouldn't get in trouble. I did not have language for bisexuality, and I wish that I had because I think that also made things a little confusing because I also did like men,
Mhm.
but women, man, like so in high school, I remember being attracted to boys, but also being like, women are just so beautiful. I'm sure everyone thinks women are more beautiful than men. Stuff
Yeah.
that I look back on it and I'm like, well, there's yet another green flag for you, dear, about what's going
Mhm.
on. In college, I would say, is where I really started putting things together because I got better language for things. Um, I had the opportunity to be with several women in college, and I couldn't pull it off because I was terrified. Not
Mhm.
normal terrified of what am I even doing, but terrified because I had just gotten kicked out of church, and let's just add more things to the list of things. That was a little difficult, and I was so naive. I feel sorry for myself back then. It all turned out well, but I was out, but I wasn't super public about it. I was talking to my sister a little bit about this the other day. Like, my recollection of being in college in the mid-90s, mid to late 90s, is that being a bisexual person was it was a little fraught with peril because people treated it like a party favor. People
Mm,
expected
mhm.
to be like, "I kissed a girl and I liked it, and I'll do
Yeah.
it on the couch while you watch."
Yeah.
It was a
Mhm.
very public expectation that you must be wild, and I fell for that a little bit.
Mhm.
So I wasn't super out because I didn't really wanna get sucked into what the expectations were around being
Mhm.
bisexual, but every person I dated knew. I was
Hmm.
upfront with them about that. I would say that my real coming out, or I don't know, that's probably not the right way to put it, but after my second divorce, which I chalk both of my divorces totally up to religious trauma. After my
Mhm.
second divorce, I kind of was just like, "You know what?" And I had my hot girl summer. All of my friends were totally fine with it. My son instantly accepted it. That, I think, was the one thing I was a little bit worried about because you just never know. I think if he had felt some kind of way, I would have been crushed. Um,
Mhm.
but he loves me for who I am, and it doesn't matter, which I think is sort of
Mhm.
should be for people. It's just who you are.
Yeah. How long have you been with Angie?
Angie and I are coming up on 4 years.
Wow, awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, which as 2 women in a committed relationship and not living in the same house is something of an anomaly. We joke all the time about
Wow,
the
y you
anomaly.
don't live together?
No, right?
Wow. That's impressive. I guess, was there any religious guilt overlap into being queer?
Yeah. And also, I had absorbed some really negative beliefs about queer relationships. I didn't realize how much I had absorbed this until I was somewhat older and where I was listening to older queer people talk about their own experiences trying to be in same sex relationships when they were younger. And the expectation was that relationship's not real and it's not going to last. And I remember telling myself, I actually can't move forward and try to go out with this girl because we're never going to stay together. So this wouldn't be fair to her, which was crazy and not true, but that's something that I had absorbed. That may not just be religious culture, that was probably heteronormative culture at the time. There weren't a lot of negative feelings about liking women because looking back in our literature, being queer was definitely wrong, but most of their examples were about gay men. which I do
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
relate to. And I'm like, "Well, good thing I'm not a gay man," right? If they had given me examples of lesbianism, I might have been like, "Oh, thanks for the case study here that I can now express what's
Yeah.
going on." They didn't seem to be as worried about that. I know that they would be against it. In the examples that they used to teach us things, they did not talk about women, they talked about men.
Where are you at now religiously, spiritually? Where did you land?
That's a really great question. I started going to a church a couple of years ago or so, and I like being in the church community because it gives me the things that I miss about the time that I was in with Jehovah's Witnesses, which wasn't a lot, to be fair. But what I did like while I was there was the way that we did so much for people. I liked the food. I liked visiting people in the hospital. I liked doing things that helped out and helping people with their kids and stuff like that. And so I've got that in a progressive church community here in Morgantown. I met them actually at the Pride Block party in the town
Nice.
one year, and they were tabling, and I was like, "You seem out of place." And the person at the table was like, "Do you think so?" It was just a really great conversation and an opportunity to talk about spiritual things, and I realized how much I had missed that. I don't necessarily want someone to dictate doctrine to me, but I really did like the intellectual discussion of what might this mean when people were living at this time. We had a great sermon last week about Christian nationalism and what it was like at the time living under empire and being a revolutionary. And that is the language that I'm speaking, and that speaks to me.
Mm.
Um, I read a lot. I read a lot of spiritual texts and things like that. I like reading about ancient Christian women and the things that they were doing. And I can also cast a mean spell, and I do
Mm.
both. You know,
Mm.
Nice.
my own
Yeah.
personal graveyard dirt sits right next to some of my favorite religious texts.
Nice.
I have stopped worrying about reconciling those 2 things. That is just who I am, and I find meaning in both of those things. And there are people in that congregation who are all over the spectrum in terms of belief. There are people who don't believe at all, and there are people who believe that God is love, and there are people who believe every word of the Bible and that Jesus was a person and that he speaks to them, you know?
Mhm.
There's just the whole range of things, and the things that I get out of being in community with them are just so incredibly valuable.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Do you feel connected still with Appalachia in spite of all of the trauma that Appalachia has? Did being Jehovah's Witness make you feel more or less connected to Appalachia?
Being a Jehovah's Witness made me feel less connected to Appalachia. They don't want you to connect to anything besides them. I got connected to a lot of things once I got rid of them. So,
Mhm.
so there's that. I spent a lot of time trying to run away from Appalachia, and I landed in literally the only state that's entirely within the Appalachian mountain range. So I
Mhm.
did not do well there. I have to say, I think that younger people have done a tremendous job of rebranding Appalachia, of
Sure.
resuscitating some of the old traditions. The possum is now everybody's new favorite thing, and
Yep.
I did not see that one coming.
Yep.
Um, and also, this is just my own personal backstory trauma. Like, my parents, in addition to being Jehovah's Witnesses, they they had a family band, and what they played was this old-fashioned mountain music, dulcimers, banjos. I played 5 instruments by the time I was
Mhm.
Wow.
sang. I
Yeah.
was on the stage when I was, like, 3 or 4. I sang, I danced, I hated most of it. All of those things are connected through no consent, no control over what happens to you. So if we weren't knocking on people's doors, we were practicing this music and or on the road to perform it. I really pushed off hard against Appalachia because none of it was my own. All of it was
Mhm.
somebody else's vision of what this should look like. And after some time, and thanks to all of the wonderful efforts of younger people who made it look wonderful again, and also through junking some of the white supremacy things I grew up in and not realizing how that impacted me, I
Huh.
realized just how ground zero Appalachia is for things like mutual aid, for things like creating another system we can step into so we can step away from things like capitalism and
Yeah.
how we can rebuild community. I've realized there's a reason why there are so many charismatic and other types of deep evangelical faiths in that area, and it's because of the extraction. The extraction, not just the coal and the gas, but the water and the trees, all the way down to the people's bodies.
Yeah.
You are so overwhelmed with despair, you stop thinking that change in this life is possible, and so you start looking to the next one. A charismatic set of beliefs that help you figure out how to survive in Appalachia, of course you're going to be attracted to that.
Yeah.
Appalachia is an incredibly radicalizing place, one way or the other.
Yeah.
It is ground zero for so much of the crap that makes this country a bad place to be.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
unlearning or relearning, figuring some of that stuff out really helped me say, "This is where I'm from. This accent's not going anywhere. I can't manage apparently to get out of the Appalachian mountain range. So, let me look around and see what's up." And I've really embraced a lot of the things that I used to turn away from. You can play protest songs on a dulcimer too, and
Mhm.
you can do those songs at a fundraiser if you want to. You can find ways to make it about something that's powerful and not necessarily performative.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's all really relatable, and that is such a good point about reclaiming like, there's has been a lot of reclaiming of Appalachian things lately, and even I think with the bit of, like, the, like, mountain folklore and the
Cryptids.
what is it? Yeah,
Yeah.
cryptids
Mhm.
and the mountain witches and all of these things are having a comeback too as well, so interesting.
Anything else that you wanna ask?
I think yeah, I think that's pretty good.
Is it time?
I think it's time.
It is time for the final question.
Do, do, do.
So, as you know, we like to wrap up our episode with the question, if you could go back to baby by you in the church, what words of wisdom, encouragement, love would you impart upon yourself?
I think that my younger self would be surprised and delighted at how things turned out, and surprised Armageddon's not here yet. I would tell her, keep listening to that little voice that whispers to you as you're going to sleep and when you first wake up. They don't know what they're doing, and you do. Just listen to yourself and hang in there. I thought about that question a lot, and I honestly, up to this moment, I didn't really know how I would answer that. My initial thought was to be like, here's all the doctrinal things that are wrong. I'll give this to you, but you can just get there faster. The truth is, it takes a lot of bravery to stay away and not come back, and you
Mm,
build
Mhm.
bravery by listening to what's inside of you, trusting that's true, even though everything feels like topsy-turvy opposite day.
mm.
Yeah, that's good stuff. And it won't be topsy-turvy opposite day forever. Well,
Alright.
yeah, it was awesome having you on the show. I'm so glad that we finally were able to do this. I know we've been talking about it for like ever. So
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing all of your stories and all of your knowledge with us, all the fun things.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for making this such a painless, fun thing. I'm actually surprised I didn't cry. I expected I would cry, and this was wonderful. Thank you so